Hello, everyone. My name is Christy DeJesus, and I'm a member of the WPI Innovation and Entrepreneurship team. Thank you for joining me today for the Mentors in Residence interview series titled Navigating the Unknown. Joining me today is Bob Mason, WPI alum, and also the managing partner at Argonne Ventures, managing director at Project 11, co-founder and CTO of Bright Cove, and founding member of ATG. Hello, Bob. Thank you for joining me today.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Really, the intent of this interview is to not only inspire the WPI community, but to hopefully share your experiences with them to help move past this crisis and to show them that we can emerge stronger from this. With that, I'm going to jump right into the first question. While the global impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is certainly unprecedented, economic downturns are something you have experienced before. Would you please share your experiences with previous economic crises and really what was your role during that?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I've been prepared, through my career in these types of cycles. This is actually my third economic crisis. So the first was the dot-com period, and I'll sort of go into a little bit more detail of that, then the Great Recession, and now the pandemic. For myself, I graduated in '94, computer science graduate. My very first job out of college was a startup. And that was when startups really weren't a thing, just kind of stumbled into that entrepreneurial activity. The company I started at was called Art Technology Group, ATG. And at the beginning, we basically did a lot of random projects to pay the bills, but we were essentially an interactive design boutique, doing a lot of sort of technology and media projects. And dating myself a little bit now, this thing called the internet and the web started taking off. And so we started building tools and frameworks and application servers for some of the very first personalized websites and e-commerce stores. I mean, one thing led to another, and at the height of our company growth, at the height of the dot-com period, we had over 1,200 employees worldwide. And that started when I graduated, there was roughly just 10 of us. So it was an amazing learning experience, kind of going through that type of growth. But coming out of the dot-com crisis and the resulting sort of financial turmoil, unfortunately, we had to let go 900 employees. And that was a very sobering, but probably an equally powerful learning moment around creating alignment amongst your teams, keeping focus, finding strategic insight, keep driving innovation, and trying to persevere through those types of downturns. So I was actually at ATG for a full decade as a senior software architect. So I was coding, building highly available systems, and went through those ups and downs. And at the end of the day, several years after I left ATG, Oracle bought the company for roughly $1 billion. So, through that process, I really kind of learned that, there are opportunities even when things feel really sort of dark, that if you build the right team, if you have the right focus, you can persevere and get through it. Now, sometimes it just doesn't work out, but the good thing is you can move on and go build something new and start afresh, which is good. My second one was through the Great Recession. At the time, I had been the co-founder and CTO of a second company called Bright Cove. And we started the company in 2004, early 2005. So we were 3 or 4 years into the company growth. We'd been kind of a hot startup in Boston with attracting a lot of talent. And then the Great Recession hit. Now we were fortunate in that we had raised some significant capital before the recession, but we really had no idea of how long it was going to be, what type of impact it was going to have, what type of lack of sales velocity. And so we had to take a very prudent and conservative approach and also lay off people at the company. Not as significant as my time at ATG, but really kind of trim back and focus the company again. And sometimes, during these moments, even though it's troubling and hard for a particular individual, the company as a whole can become stronger. You get more refined, you work better as a team. And so really focusing on what you do together as a team is a really critical component on how you kind of get through these moments of time. So in this day and age, obviously a pandemic is unique. We're all kind of learning on a day-to-day basis, but I think the fundamentals remain true. There will be a time when life will feel normal, even if it's not the same now. Economic growth will come back. Businesses will be vibrant. And it's important for us to try and navigate with our team members to kind of figure out our unique path through that process and to work as diligently and as empathetically as possible with everyone else to figure it out.
Thank you. One of the things that you talked about was really the uncertainty and ambiguity that it can be paralyzing for some people. How did you effectively communicate with your teams, your customers, your community during these times of uncertainty? And more importantly, what advice would you give someone today who is either managing a student project or leading a team or running a business?
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost is just the self-awareness and acknowledgement that there are a lot of unknowns. Like as an engineer by training, in our very sort of nature is to solve problems and have answers. And sometimes just acknowledging that we don't have an answer, that we're going to need to figure it out, is the first step on that path. I think being transparent and open, and being, once again, empathetic that other people might be feeling uncertain is really, really valuable. And so coming from a point of humanity, I think is really, really critical as a first step. Going forward, I think what's really valuable is having a vision. Now, that could be a vision that comes from the leaders of your own company, the leaders of your own project, but really sort of setting out, like, what can we accomplish? What can we do today? What can we get done a month from now? And just like moving forward, even on an incremental, iterative basis, that sense of movement and solving sometimes small problems over and over and over again actually builds the right type of momentum to get through and solve really hard challenges.
And as a leader, how do you balance communicating the harsh reality while still creating hope in this unprecedented environment of challenge and change? How do you find that balance?
Well, I don't think any of us have a perfect answer for that. And it's a case-by-case basis. So I do early stage investing. So I work with a whole host of different startups and founders, and they're all facing really unique challenges and opportunities. And I think you really, in many ways, you have to dive into the specific details of your particular circumstance and build a network of mentors and peers where you can problem solve and see patterns of how people are dealing with similar issues. Out of that, you really just kind of have to synthesize and make a judgment call. And in some circumstances, it's better to be decisive and to move forward and to adapt than it is just to wait out and defer making any key decisions. Not making decisions isn't helpful. Moving forward and figuring out what your next step is going to be and bringing clarity to everyone on what role they can provide in accomplishing a project or moving a business forward is really, really critical.
And that's a great lead into the next question that I wanted to pose to you was, what advice would you give someone regarding how someone can empower their teammates or their employees or their community members to become the change agents that we need to be successful in these very difficult times?
Yeah, so I take, I'm going to get a little geeky here, but I take a strong set of principles from a methodology in software engineering called Scrum. And Scrum is a framework by which software engineering teams kind of self-organize to work on projects and move things forward. I won't go into all the specific details, but there are a few key principles that I've sort of gleaned out of that engineering process that's actually really valuable for any type of project, any type of organization, any type of team to kind of work effectively together. So first and foremost, it's really around having an absolute set of priorities to really understand what's most important, what's the second most important, third, fourth, fifth, etc. Understanding the relative importance of different initiatives, tasks, or other activities is really critical. Always change. New ideas will pop in, new problems will be confronted, and then you can have a really coherent and rational conversation on the relative importance. Oh, I just heard this piece of feedback from a customer or a project member. Is it actually more or less important than all the other things that we have on our list? And the reality is, even if something feels urgent, it's actually not as important as things that you've already decided that you need to work on. And importance is a really helpful and valuable tool. Second is, once you've set those priorities down, you really want to sort of foster an environment where people aren't imposed, aren't told what to do, but that they volunteer and take on work that is most relevant to the skills that they bring to bear. So just as a small sort of psychology, perspective, if a manager or a project leader told me, Bob, I want you to accomplish this task and I want it done in 2 days, instantly my skepticism rears its head. It's like, well, why are we doing that? Do I really believe I can get it done in 2 days? What's the real scope of work, etc. But if on the flip side, someone is presenting to me, here's a set of objectives we need to get done over the next month. Here's a high-level goal that we're trying to accomplish 2 weeks from now. Let's break that down into individual tasks as a team. And then I volunteer and say, like, well, these are the 3 things that I can take on. This is how long I think it's going to take. And this is the resources I'm going to need to have. Myself having a sense of ownership and personal responsibility over telling the team that I'm going to take responsibility and be accountable for this changes the dynamic completely. I have a sense of agency, ownership, and responsibility to try and deliver on what I thought could be done. Now, maybe I was wrong, maybe our estimates are going to be off, but like, you can adjust from that perspective. But I think that notion of having people take on responsibility is really critical when you're trying to navigate these uncertain times. And then third is creating a culture of retrospective and continuous learning improvement. So once again, in software engineering, oftentimes you're doing work in what are called sprints of time. Every 2 weeks, every month, whatever that is, there's a unit of time that you're working on to accomplish a specific project. At the end of that period of time, getting together with your teammates or your colleagues and looking back. What did we do really well? What could we have improved? And what are we going to take on together as a team to get better in our next cycle? Building that type of culture of continuous learning and self-improvement really emphasizes the ability for you guys to accomplish work together. It's not about creating a culture of blame. It's about identifying your strengths and weaknesses and how you're going to collectively work on those together.
Great, thank you. One of the many challenges relating to this pandemic is getting the right equipment to the frontline workers. There is an overwhelming sense of urgency, and thousands of people truly have mobilized to get involved and make a difference. Would you please share an example when you were able to use a sense of urgency as a powerful unifying force to catalyze your own teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's not as grave or important as bringing protection material to our health workers and our essential workers. But I think there are these forcing functions, these moments in time that kind of provide clarity to people on what's truly, truly important. And I think that's sort of representative of what we're kind of seeing, where people are changing business models, they're retooling work, they're volunteering, they're donating to really kind of step up in a crowdsourced manner that incrementally can and collectively actually solve these grand challenges. So, for myself, I'll talk about in that first startup, ATG. I mentioned kind of all the trappings of success at one moment where we had, 1,200 employees. We were a public company. There was also a moment in time, there was about 30 or 40 of us. None of us got paid for like 6 months because we had cash flow issues with the company. And we really had to come together as a team to kind of pitch in. Some of us had a little bit of extra cash in our savings account, so we loaned money to the company. Others of us, contributed in other forms about spending more time working on projects, being really, really creative in solving sort of core customer needs, quicker, faster, better, so we could get cash in the door. And collectively through that experience, even though it could have been the end of the company, the death of the company, we actually came out of it really, really strong. And that moment in time when all bets were off, and we really kind of had to focus on what was most important to survive as a company, really provided us the strength and the backbone and the fortitude as a team to come together to really tackle some really hard challenges we had that set the stage up for the long-term success that we saw as a bigger business.
Great, thank you. A majority of the people view a crisis, a typical crisis, as something to get through, basically to endure until they can get back to what they call business as usual, business as normal. How would you educate your team or your workforce, or simply some advice, that markets now have changed and we all need to adapt? So that's a lot of the feedback we're getting from when talking with students and WPI community members. How do we really adapt to this new normal?
Yeah, and I think it is, once again, really important to recognize that we don't know yet the full implications, but we do know the world will be different. How we engage as business, how we organize ourselves, how we travel, what type of priorities we're making in our family, our healthcare systems. There are going to be deep transformative changes that are going to occur over the next several years. And so I think, once again, recognizing that that is true doesn't mean that you can't be proactive, that there won't be joy again in the world, that spring won't come back around, that elements of our old lives will feel normal, even if the underlying substrate is different. And that's why I think it's really critical, as I mentioned, to sort of build a culture and a set of expectations of continuous learning, constant adaptation, to really try and be introspective and retrospective as a team, of looking at what has changed and trying to anticipate as best as you can the role that you can play on going forward in a different way. For some businesses, projects, companies, the world is going to be actually much better. Their business opportunities are going to expand, their customer bases are going to grow, transformations around industries are going to be quicker than they had anticipated. But for others, it's going to be deeply traumatic, hard, and they're going to need our support to kind of get through that type of transformation to the new systems and environments and economies that will be emerging out of this. But in the grand scheme of things, human progress will keep moving forward. We will build new, vibrant communities, economies, businesses, societies, and we have to be supportive of each other through that process and being understanding when people kind of need help as well.
Thank you for that. What advice do you give WPI students who are mastering this remote learning during this D term? And what advice do you offer as they progress through their studies in general?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reality is like you've all been pushed into the deep end of the pool. And, that comes with its own challenges, but, the proverbial its own opportunities. When you enter the workforce and you work on new and exciting projects, the nature of that work will probably be deeply transformative. I think increasingly companies are going to be focused on resiliency. They're going to be focused on remote distributed work. They're going to be focused on building strong communication platforms to enable their team members to be effective no matter where they are. And so the challenges that you feel right now are actually learning opportunities. How do you collaborate together as a team to solve a project in a remote distributed fashion? How do you get research done when you can't always be in the same room? How can you become an educated learner in a collaborative online environment? Those are going to be incalculable skills that you'll be able to bring to the real world in lots of different settings. Nonprofits, your own startups, new businesses that you want to create, or large corporations. And your ability to communicate the stories and lessons you've learned coming out of those particular opportunities will really set you apart when you need to get hired by businesses in the future as well. These are going to be looking for people that have those adaptable skills and the ability to sort of persevere and be resilient through these types of challenges.
Bob, thank you so much for your time today. I cannot thank you enough. We appreciate it. Going forward, if we'd like to do this again, hopefully, if you have more insight that you'd like to share, some more experiences, we would welcome having you back. So thank you very, very much again.
It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to hearing some lessons and learning from others around the WPI community.
Great, thank you.